Well, Jordan, just leave. Me and Johnny got it for the next 2
Yeah.
hours.
I mean,
Hold on.
it's all right if we can't hear you.
All right. Now they should be able to hear me and miss the whole intro and everything that I was saying. So cool.
That's good. That's
You
good.
know. Anyway, what I was saying.
F-I-N-E.
Welcome to room
Yeah.
145. I got to do this again. You know. Focus on some good things this week, today, tomorrow. Good. Glad my audio is better. Sorry for the entirely terrible start to this. But
It only took 10 minutes.
yeah, it's whatever. 7, right? There's a handful of things to be frustrated and irritated about in the news cycle right now. But you know, participate, be aware, but don't let it be who you are. Don't let it make you hate your neighbors, your relatives, your friends, your coworkers.
Yep.
You know.
Well, and it's weird too because that distinction isn't really talked about or really understood, but it's a lot of people are lost in it right now, and the people that are lost in it largely aren't even that really paying attention.
Right.
So it's a very confusing time. Like
True.
everyone speaks in memes now.
Yes.
I made a joke a long time ago that basically, so Twitter is a very, very small version of Facebook, right?
Yeah.
And so then I had the idea of, and I'll put it out into the universe because I'm not going to do it, of taking a very, very small version of Twitter and just keep reducing it over time. But the next step, it seems obvious to me that there are no words allowed. It's a social media website in which you can only speak in GIF and meme.
I feel like that's already that's just Instagram, isn't it?
It's, well, yes, but it was going to be focused in like a timeline type interface, and my goal was to try to get people to talk about like real topics using just GIFs.
Like pre-made GIFs, like they have to go and find like pre-made memes and apply that like everybody already does.
We kind of used to do that at work. When I worked in the call center, tech support call center. I mean, you have to. It's such a brutal job. You're just getting beat up by customers all day long, right? So that was kind of, I created a Discord channel for a lot of the agents to join, and it was literally just it was a way to blow off steam, and it was 98% GIFs and memes about how their calls were going. And it was, I mean, it was the highlight of your workday for sure, because you're just, I would be crying laughing. I'd have to like mute my phone sometimes going through it, but yeah.
I had a funny work moment like that in my previous group. We had this new guy, CJ Majors, in our group, and we used to always talk about Dave Chappelle all the time. And the test engineer in the group, his name was Matt Reeves, and he was in the morning meeting. You basically, if they pick on you, you'd have to tell them your plan for the day, right? What you were going to accomplish. So Matt is trying to be really serious, and he even like calls out the boss during this in a very kind of subtle, indirect way. And while he did that, I sent CJ a GIF of Chappelle as Diddy when he's doing that, like this face and the tongue kind of pops out. And he just audibly lost it in the middle of this meeting in front of the entire group.
That's
and
so good.
He was laughing so hard that I couldn't control myself, and I started laughing.
Yeah.
And we kept laughing. They had to skip us the first time around, and then they had to come back to us. And I still couldn't breathe, and I was just like, I'll talk to you later about it. I can't do this right now.
That's fantastic.
That's
fantastic. Awesome. Hey, real quick, we had two new followers while we were offline.
Nice.
I don't know how to pronounce these, so maybe I'll get better at doing them. But MW Lithea, Lithea, MW Lithea, and Robbie Cuba. I know who that is too. Robbie Cuba. I don't know who Robbie Cuba is, but it sounds like a fly person. Robbie Cuba,
I dig it.
I can see them in my brain. Like I know what Robbie Cuba looks like, but I have no idea what they look like in real life.
It could be like a b-boy name. He could be a boxer.
Yo,
it could be a
that's
whole
true.
bunch of different things.
It's definitely in my head. It's a b-boy from like the 70s though. That's Robbie Cuba.
Or like a bad guy in Streets of Rage.
Ooh, that works. That works.
That has a pair of Ray-Ban aviators and never takes them off, even when they get in a fight.
Truth.
And like a visor that they wear backwards and upside down.
Oh man. Getting brutal.
No, that's a good look. That's actually, I mean, look at my shirt. I can't say anything about anybody's attire.
Dude, but that's it, man. You never try. That's one of the funniest experiences I've ever witnessed or known about when it comes to that, like style or attention from the opposite sex.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you probably know where I'm going with this, but it was absolutely with you and Nathan, dude.
Oh yeah.
I don't. We were in like an Express or something like that. Like
Banana Republic.
Right, a nicer clothing store in a mall, and Nathan is he always is put together, right? He takes 2-hour showers. He has a moisturizing routine. You know what I mean? He's a well-groomed man. Yeah. Always like that. Like I've never seen him disheveled.
Well, he's hairy too. Like the lotion routine for a hairy person is a much different thing.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for him it's probably olive oil, but whatever. He's that guy. But
just with a brush, with like a barbecue brush.
Yeah, right. But dude, we were in this store, and he's he probably has several $100s worth of clothing in his outfit, right? And he's trying on this nice leather jacket, and he's talking to the chick working there who's helping him out. And Alex is wearing thrift store pants and like a Velociraptor t-shirt. Actually, no, it was a t-shirt that had like bison on it or a deer.
It was caribou, yeah.
Yeah. And she was constantly complimenting Alex's outfit, and Nathan was just like heartbroken, dude.
Nathan was probably wearing clothes from that store in the previous.
Yeah, probably. Right.
Where did you get that caribou shirt? I actually found it on the ground.
Right.
Yeah, it was just washed out in an inlet. Like found it in a pipe.
A pipe.
Someone tied it to their gutter to keep it attached to their house. It was just in the elements for weeks. So good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Before we get anything, we should probably say that since last week, we've not only completed the first drive for a 40,000 pound food truck, but we also doubled it.
For sure.
So thank you to everyone who contributed, and we've got some follow up to that we'll discuss. And I reached out to the food bank itself, and we scheduled a tour that Jordan and I will be going on the 23rd of this month. Maybe hopefully interview a person there, see the truck itself, one of the trucks, see what it looks like, get a little bit more information, and keep you guys abreast of the situation, see where the dollars went, and maybe get a closer look overall of the warehouse too. So
Yep. That's awesome, guys.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that whole process. I've had discussions with people offline, just at work or wherever. The barrier to entry for giving, for donating. There's a few things. You always wonder, where does your money go? What level does your dollars actually contribute? Which is kind of why I think the benefit of doing something as a group, where we set a goal and you can donate $1 or you can donate $10, but ultimately when we get to the end point, we get to see that larger impact, rather than, you might think if you give a charity $10, or if you throw something like, all right, well, what's $10 actually doing? Whereas, if your $10 is part of 1,000, which we hit, as John said, we not only hit the goal but doubled, which should be up on the screen for everybody. We did hit $1,000. Thank you to our anonymous community member that once we hit our $500 goal,
doubled it.
They decided to match it.
That's
and,
awesome.
So yeah, now we will collectively be funding 2 40,000-pound truckloads of food being delivered to the food bank. And yeah, excited to share more of that story, where the food goes, kind of what the operation looks like for the food bank, what are their processes, you know, how many people are they impacting, that sort of thing. So
yeah, and kind of right from the jump, kind of a broader, simpler, a basic approach. I talked to an individual there, and they said that, you know, truck comes in, so that $500 is essentially paying for the delivery of an entire truck of food, right? So that's exactly what that means. And they get trucks, you know, throughout the year. You know, they have, you know, they're connected with larger organizations like Whole Foods, Costco, Kroger. They're even funded by 2 different government programs, and they also, during the summer months, hook up with local farmers in the area to get fresh produce. So these trucks come to a warehouse, and it sounded like they're hooked up with a bunch of different soup kitchens and other food banks in the area, and they fulfill orders, right? So they'll get an order from entity X for 10 cans of beans, you know, a thing of tomatoes, 30 pears, that type of stuff. And then they start shipping out to other areas. And then a couple days a week, they also serve as a soup kitchen themselves, or an entity like that is doing a direct product to individual service. So this $1,000 will likely impact a larger area than we were maybe even expecting. So that was a very positive. But the meeting on the 23rd will definitely get a little bit more specifics and put some imagery to all of this, which I think is important.
Yep, for sure. And hopefully next week. Go ahead, Alex.
Go ahead. Do you guys plan on like vlogging it or documenting it with just pictures, or how are you going to go about it?
Yeah,
Jordan's got this camera that's got like a suction cup right here, and he's going to stick it in his forehead. And
he's got plenty of real estate up there.
Yeah. Dude, man.
Yeah, that's both with the same one.
Jeez. This guy. Yeah, with all your hair. Get out of here, dude.
Well, I can't really say anything. I mean, this hat, look at this. This is hiding a 4-head or a 7-head, whatever that is.
Yeah, but all that hair you got up there, dude. I don't have any of that.
So you said you're gonna just do pictures and maybe like document the interview a little bit.
Yeah, it also is going to depend on kind of what they allow. But I know they said that we could take some pictures. Yeah, we'll get what we can. If we can, you know, record certain areas. You know, we definitely plan on asking some questions of the people that work there, whoever's given the tour, so we can get some more intimate details. But yeah, definitely plan on sharing as much as we can of it. And hopefully next week, on the live show, we'll be able to have a volunteer from one of the soup kitchens that gets their food from the Seagate Food Bank. So we can kind of see and hear about kind of the frontline story of somebody that's working, you know, and volunteering directly with the people, and kind of how, you know, I guess the next step of that process from the coming in and being distributed to the soup kitchens to then making it into the you know, hands of the people that need it.
Yep. And that's awesome. I think she's been doing it for like over 20 years or something like that.
Yeah.
Did you talk to her and ask her how long she's been doing it? Because ever since we were kids, I think she's been doing it.
Yeah. No, I didn't ask her specifics. I just asked if she'd be willing to join us for maybe 10 or 15 minutes next week, live, and talk to us a little bit about it.
Yeah, cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be awesome.
Sure.
Cool. I'm gonna hit the bathroom real quick, and then I got some cool Valentine's Day related maybe we take it in that direction, and maybe in a direction that you weren't expecting. So
Yeah.
be right back.
Uh-oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, Valentine's Day, man. It's always hilarious, the things that you see. Scrolling through Facebook, man, it was I've been off social media for years. I haven't touched Facebook. Honestly, starting this project together is kind of the only reason I kind of popped back into social media, because it's going to be an important thing, especially when everybody's, separated right now. It's not like you can really get in front of a bunch of people. So social media is going to be an important aspect of kind of putting out the message we're trying to. But man, popping in there last night and just kind of scrolling through a little bit. Even Valentine's Day, man, just gets consumed with negativity. It's
marketing.
It's bizarre.
It's all it's negativity and marketing.
Yeah, man. It's like you've got men posting about how they're expected to do X, Y, and Z, and nothing is reciprocated, and then you have women posting about kind of the same thing, and how it's if I think Cardi B put something out there where it's like whatever your man gets you, you get them half the value of it in return, or something like that. It's like why even say it?
Yeah, just erase feminism.
Right.
That's essentially what she's saying. Like, if as a man with a woman, you owe her more, essentially.
Right.
And women don't. Right. That's not good. That's not a good message.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference of expecting chivalry and a gentleman and that sort of thing, and then just that level of material garbage. So yeah, I don't know. It's just crazy that that's just the direction everybody unfortunately goes, is just negative, man. It's almost like people try to get upset.
Right. They try to find the downside.
Yeah. Rather than saying something nice, or just not saying the nasty thing you're thinking, like that you have to put it out there. Just don't,
Yeah,
don't say it. If you think that way, that's fine. But I don't know. It's weird.
Not fine. It's probably hurting you mentally.
Yeah, right. It's not fine.
More than anything.
Yeah, it's strange. I've had conversations with people at work about kind of that sort of mindset. It's similar. It's in a similar context, but it's an unrelated topic that I was going to bring up later on today with you guys. I had a question I wanted to propose and get your guys' take on it, but we'll get there after we maybe handle some Valentine's Day things. So, John, what did you have?
Oh no, I mean, in a similar vein to what I just walked into, I haven't had a great week, personally, but I wasn't necessarily sure what I was even going to have anything to talk about come Sunday, but over the last 2 days, really, kind of the universe decided to speak up, and just I ran into some interesting things unexpectedly. I threw on NPR on my way to go get a shake on my lunch break from Local Roots, again, Perrysburg. That place is awesome.
That's so wholesome. Listening to NPR on your way to get a milkshake.
Yeah,
that's probably the most wholesome thing I've heard all week.
Yeah, well, it's a peanut butter, hemp heart, cacao nib, almond milk, dates and bananas, and it's delicious. So, and I didn't even know what I was listening to at the moment, because it wasn't like a radio show. It sounded just like two untrained people talking, which it revealed itself to be. It was a father and son having a conversation that I think took place on a podcast named Beautiful Anonymous, I believe.
It's a cool
which
name.
is beautiful stories from complete strangers, or something like that.
That's a good
and
idea.
I think
really
it's
cool.
It's like a comedian or something that set it up, and I could be wrong there, but Beautiful Anonymous came up. So it's a father and son talking, and the conversation was about the son feeling like he couldn't be open about his mental health state with his parents.
Yeah.
but that he was able to do that with, a girlfriend or someone else like that, but he could never do that with his parents. And he thought it would make him feel like he was letting his parents down. Like if he felt bad mentally, it would reflect on their parenting or how they
Yeah.
reared him. But they were having this open conversation, and it was, recorded, and they were having this very intimate, personal conversation. And I guess this end of the kid hit rock bottom at one point and he eventually opened up to his parents.
Hmm.
And right off the bat, he was immediately supported. So
Yeah.
even they had that open dialogue about that event too, where it's this kid talking to his father about, of course, that's how you guys responded, and I should have known that, but it didn't prevent me from feeling that way in the moment. And it was just them contending with that relationship for like 15 minutes, and I'd never heard anything like it. It was just two people having a real conversation, and it was just on the radio.
Right, just
And
in
it
real
just
time.
it just took me off, caught me off guard.
That's
So yeah,
yeah, that's cool.
look into all that stuff. Obviously, it was worthwhile. Yeah, if you I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but
Yeah, I mean that I can understand why. Just in my experience with my parents, my in-laws, my step parents, the step in-laws. um, I've got a lot of parental figures in my life, and I can understand why the son would feel that their parents would take it as a reflection on them. Something that you don't really see when you're a young kid, at least, is of your parents, is how actually sensitive or fragile they can be about that topic. Which I mean, I get now. I've got a 7-month-old, and super nutshell story. If my wife previously, before having a kid, if she was, if we were having a discussion or a bickerman about something, and if it was about me or whatever, it never bothered me. I roll with the punches, and we have the discussion to move forward. But if it was something being talked about her, Iris, my daughter, I could no longer. I was immediately way more sensitive to the conversation, and I didn't react the way I did before. So whatever. I guess that's my 7 months of being a parent experience with it. But I get why the kid would feel that way, because you do start to see things as you get older and you start having more adult conversations with your parents, and then they open up to you and ask you questions about how you feel about certain things, or they start apologizing for things. You're like, what are you talking about? Like, that's not even a thing, or
Yeah.
there's like this layer of guilt that's almost always there. So that's, as you were telling the story, I that's kind of what I was immediately taken away. I would get that, but obviously it's great. What sort of, if you remember, obviously if you just listen to it, you're not gonna have a perfect memory of it, but what sort of mental health struggles was he dealing with?
it sounded like depression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really just a really deep dark depression that he eventually, and you kind of touched on some of the stuff. The father, after hearing this, they were thinking about a moment that had passed, right? So they had been through this. They now have better communication, and so they're talking about that time when he came to him and the events that transpired. And the father was then worried about, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to set him overboard because I'm not a professional?
Right.
But he said, you should have known. He's talking to the kid. He's saying, but you should have known, even though I'm not a professional, what I'm going to do is take that information and try to find the right person.
Right.
Which is what I guess it seemed like that's what happened. So, but it was just the honesty of the conversation that took me off guard for sure.
Yeah.
That's actually pretty cool. I've never even heard of that like open dialogue like that about such a sensitive topic on the radio. I don't really listen to the radio all that much, so I don't know if that is common or not. Um, but that talk, I mean, I've had almost that exact talk with my dad, and you really do have those feelings. Like you'll struggle with something for so long, and like you get used to it in your head because it's just with you all the time, and you don't really know it's a problem until you say it out loud to somebody that cares about you. And when I kind of manned up and told my dad and my stepmom, they were immediately uh, like helpful. And then my dad opened up to me. We had like a 2 or 3 hour conversation about how he's been struggling with depression for like the past 30 some years. And that in itself created even more of a bond, that I knew my dad knew what I was going through in a very deep manner, like a very personal manner. So if you're ever scared to open up to somebody that cares about you because you think you're going to scare them about the thoughts that are in your head, or you're going to worry them, or they're going to freak out because they don't know how to help you, just do it. Just open up to the people that love you. It makes it easier.
Yeah,
sure.
and when I was saying that the universe kind of came together on the way getting the shake, I hear that conversation. And then I threw on, which I normally do on my final working day of the week, my favorite song. As the day's coming to a close, I always put that song on, which is Graves from Caligula's Horse. And there's a line in there when it starts, the song softens, and it's the singer talking about how their child sees them whole, and how he's going to have to repay that kindness over time, right? As the father, and being seen whole kind of exactly touches on, I thought, that conversation, and exactly what you just said, that you don't know, as a kid, your parents are invincible.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
especially, I would say, maybe for boys, I would say this, you view your father as like the person that can beat up everyone, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I mean, and not to fall right into that, but I felt like that was really true for our dad.
Right.
For sure. Yeah.
So, but then as you grow up and you start having those conversations, you're like, oh, wait, you were just a human that had concerns and everything as well.
Right.
And you were just as unsure as the rest of us.
Right. And our parents, I could definitely say collectively, also were younger parents than we were. So it's like, I imagine myself in my early 20s being a parent, and man, I just feel like I don't know, I don't feel like many points in my life I was like oblivious or dumb, but you're certainly more impulsive, and you're not established. You don't know really who you are and what matters to you, and what you want to put your time into, and that sort of stuff. So yeah, taking that even further, where they're still growing up, you know, so you're even more fragile and emotional and impulsive and trying to do the right thing. So I don't know. It is an interesting thing though, because to that, John, dad can beat up anybody. It's so true, man. Remember, hey, that guy Scott 216. Thanks for the follow.
Yeah, thank you, for sure.
I'm not. There was a big gorilla at the Toledo Zoo that apparently when I was a baby, or like really young, or John was a baby, it was one of us, I don't even remember at this point, but apparently scared us, like pounded on the glass and scared us when we were kids. And the gorilla was probably, think about it as an adult, the gorilla was probably just old and ended up dying, but my dad always told us when we were kids that he went back and killed the gorilla because it scared us. So it's like, and you believed it. You're 5 years old. So you're like, wow.
My dad took down a gorilla.
Right. But yeah,
I'm pretty sure that was you, by the way.
Yeah, hilarious. Freaking outrageous. But
so go
ahead.
keep going.
No, go ahead.
Oh well, so those things kind of struck me, and I I had something I wrote down prior to the event that I'm going to talk about right now, but it's where I plan on going is the same day again because NPR just kind of sucked me in with that story. They ended up going into for Valentine's Day. They brought in this woman that's been a therapist for 20 plus years, and she didn't start off doing what she ended up doing, but the conversation was about desire in long-term relationships, and her name is Esther Perel. She's got a TED Talk that's almost that exact same name. It's like desire in long-term relationships, which it's a great watch. But they did like an hour-long interview with her that I'm going to bring up some of the things she said. But right before this, I watched the Usman versus Burns fight.
Yeah, I was trying to watch the post-fight presser this morning.
So they used to be, they basically started training together at the same time, at the same camp, and started on this journey together. And they met in a title fight yesterday. And both of them are just absolute monsters, right? They're top shelf combatants, warriors through and through. So the fight ends. One of them wins, one of them loses. And the person that's losing is crying, just on their hands and knees, absolutely crushed. Like it's so obvious that it's happening that even Joe Rogan, the commentating, takes a second to recognize it and say that he's just absolutely demolished or something like that. And while he's crying, this grown man that could kill, every 99% of all their humans on the planet is just having this incredibly emotional moment in the middle of the octagon. And the winner, his friend, is on his, and Jordan will know what this is, but he's on his knees in that very traditional Japanese martial arts respect position, just kind of observing it and like dealing with him, the fact that he just won. So he has that initial adrenaline dump. He's banging his chest and he's going to the cameras or whatnot. And then he sees his friend crying, hits his knees, right? And just kind of, then he starts getting emotional.
Yeah.
And then they kind of collected themselves. And before they raise the hand, because even after a fight's decided, the ref has to raise the hand of the winner. They met and embraced, and the loser was using the winner's shoulder as a shoulder to cry on. Like they just beat the hell out of each other. I mean, they both actually hurt each other. They were both almost knocked out at least one time in the fight.
Right.
And they're just sitting there as two grown men, sweaty, covered in each other's, blood and sweat. And the one is just, that moment, you can see it when someone just kind of lets go and they kind of fall into someone. This happened on camera between two fighters yesterday. And that moment, I liked it better than the fight.
Wow.
Itself.
Yeah, there's
usually you see that respect, but this was love. This was like real. These two have a relationship that's pretty strong.
Yeah.
And the winner couldn't recognize it in the cage at the time, but they did a post-fight interview, and the winner basically says outright that I love that dude. So it's not. It was a hard time, getting into that mindset. And then it's immediately followed up because right before the fight started, the person that ended up winning didn't touch gloves with this other person. And so then you got a glimpse into what that mindset was. He was like, no, this is my cage. He's coming to take something from me. Like these are all these stories he had to tell himself to get in there and fight someone that he loved. But that moment afterwards, they seriously just held each other for like 5 minutes, it seemed. And then you saw the loser go to the winner's team, which is they all know each other. And then he's crying in their arms too. So like, it was just really cool.
Yeah. I mean, there's certainly I mean, anybody that makes the case or the argument for it just hasn't gone through the experience. But there's no sport or really probably activity, hobby, anything that is as emotional as combat sports. MMA in particular, I would say, even over boxing and wrestling and that sort of thing, or sport jujitsu, there's a different level of work. There's a different level of putting yourself on the line. Even
literally putting your body on the line.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of men and women that fight that, you know, they in their head they are warriors. They are, you know, someone tapping out means I just kill. If we were fighting to the death, I just killed you, right? And there are people that think that way. That's the mentality they're going in there with. You know, if this was hundreds of years ago or thousands of years ago, I just killed you, and now I have everything that was yours is mine now. You know.
Yeah.
But the ups and downs of that sport are just so much more drastic than other sports. I mean, the Super Bowl just passed, and
God, was that boring.
I didn't watch. I don't watch ball sports. I used to some, but it's not the same thing. Winning and losing a basketball game or a football game or a tennis match or whatever, you finish, you know, you lose the golf tournament. Because you can see it. You watch it, like you said, John. That moment of the loser, what that feeling is, it's not the same. The highs are higher, you know, but you're putting your body on the line, your health on the line. There's also a much more rabid audience, you know, because you're paying to watch violence, so you have a much more riled up crowd, and people talk the way that the things they say about fighters, if they lose, how unforgiving it is going forward. They only care about your last performance. You know, you could be 13-0 with 13 great wins, and you go out there and have a bad night and get knocked out in 10 seconds, and that's all anybody is talking about. So you have to deal with that. Career ender. Yeah, you have to deal with that mentally, and come back and get that next win to be considered, you know, relevant again. So it's an unforgiving sport, but in those moments, there's a few, you know, really cool moments I can kind of think back on that are similar to that. Not quite the same when they're friends, but the level of respect, like when Anderson took the belt from Rich Franklin. You know, he took the belt off, put it down in front of him, and just bowed to him because of the amount of respect he had for Rich coming into those fights.
Well, and all of that was a traditional same like this. There was an element of traditional martial arts to it.
Yeah.
Like you could tell that there's some sort of classical martial arts training happening here, because it's the same behavior, same position. You hit a submissive, vulnerable position in front of your opponent, and it's a respectful thing.
Right, for sure. I wanted to let you guys know right away, but I am actually on call with work, so they're poking at me right now. I'm going to read this message from them real quick. But yeah,
just
go ahead.
On the air.
Yeah, no. I'm not going to read that out loud. I'm going to make sure. Yeah, I'm going to make sure they don't need me to jump in on something real quick.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if you watch fighting at all, Alex, or to Jordan's point with ball sports. Like, I love the NBA because I think it's a great organization, and you know, LeBron James is one of the greatest athletes to ever live. So just watching that, regardless of the sport, is something that I would want to do, just because greatness rubs off on you. And if you can glimpse it, you can maybe understand it. But to why maybe these highs and lows are so bad is, or so extreme, is the amount of sacrifice involved in something like MMA is just it. That's probably why it's unmatched.
And that's with a lot of sports. You think like somebody trained, like if you're going to play basketball or you're training for the Super Bowl or whatever, there's so much work that goes into, you know, eating right so your body's functioning correctly, working out constant every day, you know, 2-3 times a day, doing scrimmages, you know, sparring, whatever it is. Like you're sacrificing a chunk of your life, your time, and possibly damaging your body. I mean, depending on who you're
Definitely
fighting.
in combat sports, right? Well, and in
Yeah.
football, definitely, right?
Yeah, I mean every sport pretty much, like, well, maybe except for like golf, but
Yeah, I'm thinking CTE though, like irreversible,
right.
tangible damage to your brain. Those
Sure.
are like
Yeah.
guaranteed in those sports.
Right. So
To
I think
varying
that's why it's so emotional.
Yeah, it's also an individual sport, right? So
That's true. There's no
Burns,
teams.
or sorry, the person who loses the fight, when everything with Jordan was just saying, that happens after you start reflecting on it. What
Right.
happened in the cage was him dealing with it in real time, right? So
Yeah.
it's an individual sport. He
Mhm.
just lost.
Because of himself.
Yes, no one else lost. So
Yep.
he carried the banner of that loss, and it was all on him.
Yep.
And he even got to glimpse victory in the fight because he really hurt the other person in the round prior.
Yeah.
He just missed it. And as he's crying, one of the commentators says something that's just worthwhile saying, that he's been doing this clawing up for 6 years and whatnot. So they're kind of bringing in the timeline associated with this, what is now a devastating moment for this person. But
Yeah.
if Jordan wanted to.
Y'all good, Jordan?
Oh yeah, we're good. I just had to.
Okay.
They had some stuff going on at work, so we're cleared up. Yeah, I mean it's a hard, beautiful moment though. That's why the UFC does the thrill and the agony afterwards. They do a video series on the winning reaction and the losing reaction, so that way the fans can get a little bit more of an understanding of, really the toll, the victory and the loss on that sport. It's much different than losing a basketball game.
Yeah.
You probably, especially if you have kids, your son, your daughter might have just watched you get knocked out in front of the whole world and get hurt. Then they see you go to the hospital afterwards, and it's not the same thing as losing in a ball sport. So
You just shattered the image of your dad being able to beat a gorilla.
yeah, right, yeah.
Right. That's actually a good point, because most of these guys or women have families, and all their families are there to support them. And if they watch them get beat down, I wonder what kind of psychological effect that has on like
Right.
young kids watching their dad just get like pummeled into the ground.
Yeah.
And even in a relationship, what does it do
Yeah.
to the female or male that watches their partner lose to another person?
Yeah.
Like, evolutionarily speaking, that would have been a clear mate selection moment,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah.
You're watching the one you already chose get beat up by someone maybe bigger and better, right? What does that effect have on your brain? I mean, it's something that's not really studied, but something
Right.
that's interesting regardless.
For sure.
I'm sure most people are able to like compartmentalize that this is just a sport. They lost.
In the street, he'd have won, right? Like life or death.
Right.
No, I mean, that's what we do. That's what humans do.
Yeah. I guess the part on that at least is the person they lost to in any scenario, any level. If they're in the UFC, the person they lost to that they just had to watch their significant other lose to is not the person that they would have to encounter to protect their family in the real world. You know what I mean? The person that lost is still light years ahead of 99% of the population of the world. So it is
99 and then change.
Right. Yeah. For sure. A high 99%. Right.
Well, and one thing about, and we can get off the combat sports thing, but one thing that a lot of people don't understand is a fight is just an isolated event. Like, and anyone that has ever trained in combat sports, if you have a bad day, you're not the same person as when you have a good day.
Right. Sometimes you don't want to be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when you feel that on the mat or in a sparring session, just if you took that to a championship level experience, how much of a downer that would be, because before it's over that you're having a bad day already.
Yeah.
So if you go in there, now you're dealing with the fact that that you're not firing on all cylinders. So what I'm saying is these two people could fight 100 times, and the winner's gonna be different on different nights. That's something
Right.
that's
Yeah.
not talked about in fighting. It's always like this dude's the best, and no one else stands a chance, or this woman, which is just not the case. It's
Mm-mm.
pure. It's just absolutely not. And
Yeah.
a fight that also just took place. There was a six-time jiu-jitsu world champion that got submitted in
Oh yeah.
a fight. Would that ever happen in a grappling context? Never. This person would walk. That is an event where they would fight 100 times, and this dude would win 100 times. If he lost at his specialty in a fight
Mm-hmm.
because a fight is different.
Yeah, 100% it is. Yeah, I mean it's one of the most exciting things about that sport, but because the math, there's no math. It's not like person A beats person B beats person C, so person A beats person C. That doesn't work out at all.
Yeah, there's endless variables.
Yeah. So.
Well,
Yeah.
real quick on that variable point, Connor fought Dustin, right, for the second time. Connor obliterated him the first time. It looked like if any time these dudes fought, it'd be over. But Connor came in with a different stance, looking goofy. Dustin finishes him. But the post-fight breakdown by one of the more thoughtful people, I think, Dan Hardy, was talking about, is Connor even the same guy? Like, when we saw him fight the first time, all he had was just like his significant other in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's got several kids. He's like on his way to $1 billion.
Right.
Like it or not, you cannot fight that rich. Like, not in MMA. There's just too many ways to lose.
Yeah.
You can do it in boxing because you have one thing to focus on. So
Right.
like Floyd Mayweather, obviously, you can be that rich in box. I don't think you can do it and do MMA. If you've got that many distractions, someone's going to take one of those weaknesses and find it along the way. Period.
Yep. Yeah. Use it
But I
against
thought
them.
it was a good point because you're not. I don't think you're the same person as a male fighting combat wise
You almost
with
can't
and
be.
without it.
Yeah.
You can't be.
Yeah. You can be.
Not if you're.
Yeah, you're like Xenomorph said, you're not hungry. At least at the same level, you can be as in love with the sport. You can love the training. You can go through the motions, but it's not the same when you know you, your family, your kids' kids are taken care of, regardless of the outcome of what happens. There is something different there.
Yeah, and I think you're just fundamentally a different person as a human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you're actually being affected by the event of you having a child, you're not that same killer, right? In a fighting sense that you were prior.
Yeah, it softens you. You're right, for sure.
Well, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. When you're younger and you don't have all these responsibilities, you're way more impulsive, way more hungry and go get them. But as you start to acquire these responsibilities and these people that depend on you, and you have a 401k now and stuff like that, are you really the same person?
401k.
Well, and I think what it illuminates is maybe you weren't in love, or actually, so love is fleeting, right? And it's got to be treated with respect and embraced, and it's worked on. So when you have a kid, or you increase the size of your family as a fighter, maybe you're just coming to grips with the fact that fighting isn't your love anymore. Like, you might love it, but it's different to be in love with something than to love something.
Right.
And after you have a wife and child, those are the loves of your life.
I mean, I can't imagine being a professional fighter with a kid. I cannot imagine that. Given the way it affects your sleep and your attention throughout the day, like, you'd have to ignore that kid. Period.
Right. Yeah. Well, if you're gonna make it to high levels, because that sport demands it. If you're not 200% in, you're gonna inevitably you face the person that is 200% in, and it shows. on the night. But yeah, for sure. Interesting.
All right, hang on one sec. I'll be right back, guys.
Sure. Go do your thing.
I'll wait for him for that Esther Perel thing. Good. So, anything happened to you this week?
Man, I have been in the weeds for real. This week has been a blur, unfortunately. Work was just crazy busy. Iris is teething, so she's just not the happy baby that she normally is. Although Ray's last week of the wife's last week of training in her new job, so that was going to free up some things, because with her working full time during the day, I work into the later hours of the evening. I get a maximum of 5 hours during the week. If Iris wakes up before that, that's what I get. So but come Thursday, like my Thursdays at work, Thursdays are always busy, and I'm just tired, man.
It's hard to function on 5 hours of sleep. Like I used to before my daughter, 5 hours was all I needed.
Yeah,
As soon as I had her, I realized that anything less than 6 hours was unacceptable.
Yeah,
from
five hours 5 hours taking care of yourself, because you can sit down on the couch and hang out for 30 minutes and turn your brain off. But 5 hours when you have to be switched on, and you might only get, you have maybe the kids taking a nap, but your house is falling apart because you can't clean it when the kid's up. So it's like, even when you do get those breaks, you have 400 other things that you need to be doing. So 5 hours.
Speaking from experience, are you?
Yeah, right. 5 hours. 5 hours as a taking care of yourself is not the same as 5 hours with a kid. That's for damn sure. So I don't know, man. It's just been a busy week. I've been looking forward to this weekend. Next week things definitely change, which is good. Like the weekly, when we recap, if we can just get into it now, recap our kind of weekly goals, the stretching, reading, writing. I gotta say, this week I did not get to do them regularly. I want to extend it. If you guys are cool with it, I'd like to extend it, those same 3 things, for another week. I got just stuck in the mud this week. I was able to get getting some yoga stretching in the mornings. I was trying to do it during Iris's first nap, and just kind of like, I know I have 20 other things I need to be doing right now, but I'm going to take 10, 12 minutes, and I'm just going to do this. It instantly helps out, man. You feel it in your. I've gone, almost a year at this point. We're almost at March, of not moving much. Like I'm working at home. I work in IT. I'm a supervisor in my department, so there's a lot of sitting at a desk. So my work shift is sitting. In the office, we have an adjustable standing desk, so I can at least stand there, which is nice, but I don't have that at home. And
those are really expensive.
Give you one.
What's that?
If they'll give you one.
For home? I doubt it.
I mean, you're doing work for them at home.
Yeah.
No, it's at least worth asking, which anyone watching, if you're working from home, ask these things of your company.
Yeah.
It's the least they could do.
For sure. So there's that, and and then just the because the little one is going through teething, she hasn't been as happy. She's far clingier, so I'm having to hold her many, many more hours of the day than usual right now. Mm-hmm. So that's just back breaking, because it's your center of gravity's off. But whatever.
So focus on posture.
Yeah. That's something I'm trying to do it here. I'm trying to. You probably see me going down here to up here.
Just the top of your head.
Right. It's something I'm posture's something I'm trying to focus on as well, because that spine health.
Wow, nerd in you.
Yeah, for sure. But
Well, it's tough when you're sitting at a desk all day looking at a computer and like you just inevitably get closer and closer to the screen and that just
right.
bends your back.
Yeah, I've always
Yeah,
kind of just
so
had bad posture too, which isn't great. So I've kind of
Yeah.
always been a sloucher.
most people are. It's got to be a conscious endeavor, but that's like one of those quick hacks in life that you need to try to focus on.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can do it while you're walking, like push your chest out a little bit, get your shoulders back, and then posture up and breathe.
Yep.
It's
Yep.
just something when I do laps around the building at work, and it's just something I do while I do that because you just have to.
Right. Yep.
Otherwise, yeah, it's just healthier. Period. But before we go into if you want to talk about the goals and whatnot, so that Esther Perel I was talking about earlier, that therapist. So there were a couple interesting things. So her whole thing is that basically right now this is the first time in human history that people are having sex in relationships not because they need to populate a farm or a workspace.
Hmm.
And infant mortality obviously plays a role in that. If infant mortality is lower, you don't need to have as many kids biologically. Because that's, like it or not, that is just a thing on why you're producing so many kids is you're almost internally doing the calculation like one of these isn't going to make it,
Right.
Yeah.
right? So you're not doing that, and it's no longer, at least not as in as strong a sense, the wife's duty to produce children. So it's the first time that we're having sex based on desire and connection.
Hmm.
So I thought that was an interesting point that she said that, and she used verbs for love to have and desire is to want, right?
Hmm.
And bringing those two things together, and she kind of equated it, which I thought was interesting, to which kind of pertains to what we're talking about, to childhood and trauma. So if you're a child and you're ready to go start exploring the world,
Hmm.
and you look back to your parents and they provide you with that moment of, we're here, we're ready for when you return, but go enjoy yourself, go be yourself, go become yourself. But we're here,
Hmm.
we embrace what that means, and out you go. That distinction versus if they go or trying to go out and the parent goes and expresses their insecurity about them leaving, or that they're anxious about it, or they provide a leash of some kind, the person's
Hmm.
always kind of looking over their back, over their shoulder, and they're not freely able to express themselves. So I thought it was interesting. So she started framing sexual desire not in terms of the other person, right? So if I'm not in the mood, it's not your fault, that kind of thing. It was more of an internal self expression. And I thought it was because she also framed sex as not something you do, but a place you go. So if you think about
Huh.
that, the fact that if she's framing desire as an individual's self expression, that's not necessarily directly tied to, I mean, it's directly tied to the other person, but without the individual being able to be creative and explore, desire is going to be impeded, right? So, um, I think so. I read or listened to her TED talk this morning, and it says, she said, desire comes with an element of positive selfishness, essentially. So it's the ability to stay connected to oneself in the presence of another, which I thought was a cool way of framing that.
Hmm.
So, and she said, if you want to sustain desire, you have to feel and create an environment in which a person can explore themselves while knowing that their partner is there, supportive, and waiting for them, just like the child and the parent.
Hmm.
And not unrelated to the TED Talk, we'll say you guys can. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
So
Um,
is this TED Talk saying that romantic partners need to be open to each other's kinky fantasies?
I am
Is that what's
not
happening?
fueling whatever's happening right now.
Is that what's happening though? It's like you have to
Well,
they have to feel free to explore
well,
their themselves, their wants and desires, knowing that
well,
their
At
partner's
least give
yeah.
it a shot.
that their partner's not gonna dip out on them because of it.
Well,
Right.
the openness is more about, so if I'm the kinky one, it's
Mhm.
me being able to express that and explore it as an individual, not mandating the other person to do it. Like, and I thought that the best glimpse of, because had her TED talk been separate from what I heard her say on NPR, I might not have been
Mhm.
able to grasp it. But on NPR, she got couples, to record themselves, and they played a recording of a session in which the husband was cheating on the wife after decades of marriage. Okay,
Damn.
this is on. It's being recorded. You listen to the whole thing, and it starts with the wife basically saying, "I thought I was providing a family to you. This and this. Everything's internalized, right?
Mhm.
Everything's aimed at her." And he's going, as you'd expect, "You were, right?" And Esther takes a second to, because the wife chimes in to say, "Well, let's hear that for a second. Sit in that for a moment, that you were doing those things. This isn't necessarily about you. This is about him."
Mhm.
And at one point, I guess the husband told the wife that it wasn't just a person. It wasn't just like a one-off kind of thing. This person was someone I could have spent my life with. He
Wow. That's
said
really
that to
hurtful.
his wife,
Hmm.
but in his head, it was a justification. Like, it wasn't just some impulse. Like, it took someone that was so great to get me to this place, right? Which, so he's doing this justification, and which, this is what I thought was really interesting. Esther, you hear her stop him dead in his tracks as he goes to
Mhm.
justify this behavior, and she says, "Anything you're going to talk about right now with respect to your partner needs to be, I'm sorry and I understand. I
Yeah.
don't want to hear basically any bullshit," is what she said, "about you trying to justify this behavior. It doesn't matter if you intended to hurt the person, you did hurt them,
Right.
and so that needs to be recognized." But then they take this moment to frame it. She frames it to illuminate the fact that the behaviors that he elicited are not your fault, right? Like, you could have been doing all of those things you said, and this person still could have done that to you, right? So I thought it was just a very interesting, a very human way of approaching that topic. Like, and from a individual perspective, we're always blaming and looking elsewhere, just from a
Mhm.
psychology standpoint. We always feel like we're being slighted, even though we're likely not even in the attention span of the person that we're blaming things on. So she was always taking that moment to go, "No, there's a lot more individuality here, that you are not necessarily to blame for this other person's behavior, even though you're directly, connected with them."
Yeah.
Which, when you think about that desire comment, I think makes a lot of sense, because we often view a lack of desire on part of our partners as a function of ourselves, and it
Mhm.
might not be. And I thought, so she went across a bunch of different countries, and she's been interviewing people like this, and she found that people were most drawn to their partners when, say, they said something like, "When I'm away from them." So this is one instance, when you spend time away.
Yeah.
So she, basically said that that allows that mystery and intrigue and that longing basically to occur, right?
Right.
So that seems pretty intuitive. And
Mhm.
then the other condition was when that person is doing something that they love, when they're in their element, and when they're confident. So, like, you can imagine this at a party when you're watching your partner interact with someone else, you can tell the other person is interested in what they're saying, and you're watching them be confident and exude that energy. So you're
Yep.
kind of watching someone else almost appear interested, but you're also kind of like, what could they be talking about? Like, why is someone so interested? So then there's the mystery again.
I've personally dealt with and experienced those two examples. I'm sure most people have experienced that first one at least. It's funny though, I'm thinking in my head, what I was going to say is kind of like a important thing for a relationship, as we're kind of talking about. It's Valentine's Day. We can stay on this. This makes sense. And that I want you to finish, John, but seeing them in their element. As I was planning, I'm going to put a YouTube video out there on some ways to improve your relationship. And that was one of the main things that I was putting in there is there's a reason your significant other chose to be with you early on. And over time in your relationship, whether it happens 3 months in because it's puppy love and you just want to give that person all of your time, or it's a slow decay over years where you start to lose a little bit of what made you individually. Maybe you give up a hobby, or whatever it is, you stop doing something that you enjoyed, or rounded out your personality in whatever way it was, whether it's going to the gym, or it's, you have a weekend thing that you do with your friends and only your friends, and that was something that you mentally greatly benefited from. But you stopped doing those sorts of things.
Right.
Having that open discussion with your partner, to try and both sides regain some of those things, where you recognize, hey, yeah, maybe we're going to spend a few hours less together a week because of this, but ultimately the end result is a much stronger relationship because each individual is more fulfilled, and that becomes more attractive to the other person because it was before, right?
Time apart is great. You need that time to focus on the things that make you happy outside of the relationship.
Yeah.
And you do those things outside of the relationship for your relationship.
Yeah, so it's twofold. It's just objectively healthy.
Yeah.
It's for you and for the relationship. Because
Yeah.
Jordan's point, that's one thing that this Esther Perel harped on. She was like, at no point in human history, other than now, were we putting the weight of existential happiness on our partner.
Yes.
Like you need to provide me with stable
that's so
internal
huge
environment. You need to fulfill me. You need to provide me with my identity. So I think she actually that's how she framed it, is that romantic love now is an identity situation,
which is very dangerous.
Yes, which is what it has not been like that throughout most of human history.
When it beats up your partner, it's like a constant pressure and a constant feeling that they will have that they're never good enough. Because there's no way one person is going to make you happy with you. That doesn't happen from someone else. Period.
No. And so to your point, she was essentially saying the same thing, that in a long-term relationship, you must be able to, same thing with desire, explore. You need to be your own. You need to have those weekends with your friends, and you need to be able to do a hobby that you love. They are mandatory. Like otherwise, you are going to be harming your relationship. That other person might want to be connected to you, but that is not how human relationships seem to work. And she's, like I said, she's been doing this for 20 plus years, and those were her main takeaways. And the other main position in which people were drawn to their partner is when there was novelty. And that she made a point that said that is not a sexual position novelty. That is maybe I went and picked up a new skill or something like that. That I found something new about myself,
right,
that ended up being attractive to them.
Yeah. For sure.
I mean, look at musicians and athletes. Why do you think that so many people, like millions of people, are attracted to celebrities, like athletes, musicians, actors, and things like that? It's not because they're the best looking person in the world, which I mean, some of them are nice looking, but but the reason I think is that you're watching somebody in their element, especially if you go to like a live show or something like that, or you're seeing somebody train. They aren't thinking about you. Even if you're in a relationship with that person, the person doing their thing isn't thinking about you, and somehow that's attractive.
Yeah.
That's the key detail that I left out. The fact that you're observing this person being fulfilled without you.
Right. Somehow that is like one of the
Yeah.
most attractive things.
So, and anyone who's fought has experienced this directly. If likely, if they've had a person in their life that watched them fight and or compete in some way, doesn't have to be fighting, but I have a personal experience with this with fighting. The women I've been with, if they came to a training session and they watched me spar, that's often referred to as like a high point in their attractiveness to me.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Not because I'm like the best boxer in the world or whatever, but because of the things we're talking about. And the same thing for if you came to a fight that I was in and I won, like the desire shot through the roof. Like
Right.
in that moment for that time. Um, and all for those reasons. That's the good point though that you said, that it's longing and fulfillment and whatnot as a result of watching, that person be whole in a
Right.
sense without you.
Right.
So yeah, you have to complete yourself. You cannot rely on another person to complete you. That is a recipe for disaster.
And kind of bouncing off that, like you guys know, like your wives are in their professions or whatever. They have their hobbies. When they are talking about something that they are so interested in, they're choosing to share that with you. Like maybe something happened at the lab that they, using their brains, helped discover,
Right.
and or maybe they found a new artist that they're obsessed with and they want to tell you. Having those, like hearing somebody talk about something that they're so passionate about, it's kind of the same effect, because you can't really understand, because maybe you don't have that same mind, like you don't really care about art or whatever, but just hearing somebody so passionate about something, that in the person that you love, is like even more of an attractive feature.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, the the lab stories that come home, it's like I'm sitting there like, yeah, I know some of these words.
Right,
as
exactly.
as she's telling her stories. But yeah, there's definitely, I mean, a strong attractive quality to skillfulness too, right? And it's
Yeah,
like
right.
the time and effort and work and their interest in what they're talking about, even though I don't know what the hell she's saying at all,
No.
like at
That
all.
goes for you too, though. Like I can't hear you talk about your profession. Like when
Yeah,
you and my
yeah,
wife start talking, I just
right,
got to be like,
yeah, right, for sure. It's not a
"You're speaking Mandarin."
yeah,
I
no, it's another language, and now I can understand that more with geez, with Ray's. It's probably even more so because everything has a freaking Latin name and there's 19
Hmm.
syllables to every word that she's talking about, and
so
but
yeah. So why though is that attractive? Because if you're not an individual that's exploring those things about yourself, you're not going to be as confident.
Hmm.
One, and you're just not going to be as happy,
No.
or you're not going to be as nice to be around.
Yeah, because you're
yeah,
not fulfilled.
yeah,
Well, and you're going to start leaning.
Hmm.
And as soon as you the more you lean on the other person,
Right.
the less interested they are, and the more weight they feel, and it's all
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah. The more you're completely, self-sustaining with your, whether it's your career or your hobbies or whatever, your mental state, because I think that's the end result, is where you are mentally. All of these other factors contribute to that. So if you are at a stable point with what you have going on in life and you feel happy with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
there's a level of interest also that picks up. You see it. You almost feel the weight. All right, I'll open up a little bit and be a little bit more specific here. Ray and I have been together since we're 29. We've been together since just before I turned 18. So I was 17 when we first started dating. So babies, looking back on it, right? So there's a lot of growing up that we did together, and early on, we moved in together really early. Second year of college, we moved into an apartment together in a city with no family. We made a lot of, man, it was tough, but those times in Cincinnati, when first off you're broke because you're working a low wage job, maybe part-time as a student or maybe full-time as a student, whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
you're broke, so you have all these other variables, but you're doing nothing to fulfill yourself. So we both did this leaning act that John was just talking about, and it creates a toxic environment. But you can feel it when you walk into the room, that collectively the other person is not fulfilled and not happy, and you almost then start to demand more from the other person down that. It's almost like
It's a feedback
It's a
loop
snowball
for sure.
effect.
yeah, it is and it's hard to being young like that. It's really hard to be aware. Once we kind of overcame that, we obviously whatever, our relationship has grown light years since then. But being able to have those discussions, we reflect on those times kind of a lot, as these are clear examples. We ran the experiment, so it's like we know when we eliminate X, Y, or Z from our lives, we already know where it kind of leads. So
Right.
you have to be able to be fulfilled as yourself. I know that that's always talked about when you talk about relationships. It's like, yeah, no one else is going to make you happy, but you need to explore that. That's not.
Yeah.
Don't just take it as face value. Dive into that, because it's probably the biggest thing for long term. It's easy to ignore people's behaviors or their quote unquote flaws, or it's easy for someone else to deal with your annoying behaviors or habits in the beginning. It's easy to be nice all the time because you're only seeing each other a few times a week or whatever. That fades. So if you're with somebody to try and develop something long term, you have to continue to put that effort into yourself, because that will pay the long term dividends.
Yeah.
And it's not a selfish thing. It's not like you ignore what the other person's wants, because there's absolutely concessions that need to be made in a relationship. If you have a habit that is damaging to your relationship, that isn't something that's necessarily paramount to your happiness, you can make concessions. You can, if you're someone that goes out with your friends 4 nights a week drinking, and that's damaging to your relationship, or your wife or your husband doesn't like that, yeah, limit that. Make that 1 night a week. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you can still get it, but you
Well,
do need to dive into that self exploration.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not, even if it is selfish, like I said last week, selfishness can be a great thing. I think people need to be selfish once in a while in order to be happy. Because
Yeah.
need a new
say
word.
say Jordan, you really wanted a new guitar because you're looking for a specific sound or something, and you want to set it up exactly how you want it, but it's going to cost I don't know, $1,200, $1,500. But you put the time in, you put money away for it every month, and then when it comes time to buy it, as a father and as a husband, you're always going to have a certain amount of guilt because
Right.
you say, well, this could go towards X or Y.
Right.
But really, you having that thing that you work so hard for, the thing that you're going to use for your happiness, yes, it's technically selfish, but it'll it'll circle around to make your relationship better in an odd way.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that those feelings of guilt are functions of societal dysfunction.
Absolutely. It is.
We don't frame things properly. We don't live in a world that actually respects the human individual brain and its experiences.
Mhm.
So we always are leaning
Mhm.
and or being forced to lean. If you think about the average work week and the average
Yeah.
job, it's almost mandating a lean on someone.
Mhm.
Most people are doing stuff they don't like. So that's step one. If you don't like it, you don't like what you're doing most of your week, you're going to be leaning and or doing time outside of that that's wasted, right? So like
Yeah.
you said, if you're going out to the bar or whatever 4 days a week, that's not a hobby,
Right.
period.
That's just escapism,
It's escapism, right? And there are versions of escapism that are hobbies.
and
Video
they're
games.
healthy.
Yeah.
Video games, for example. Like I
Yeah.
started thinking this week as video games, I think should start being used as a form of therapy in different ways.
Mhm.
Like there are so many ways, especially if you designed a video game for mental health, I feel like it would be a very easy thing to build upon.
Yeah.
And you'd have a lot of people that were interested in it. But that's a healthy escapism. You're actually doing something, your mind's engaged in it. You're not
Yep.
just like you said, you're going out, alcohol's likely involved, and it's escapism in the sense that you're physically leaving, but it's also just like hitting yourself in the head with a hammer in order to
Mhm.
go to sleep, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, that is what it
Yeah.
is, and you're taking, like, the easy way out. Like,
That's what it is.
that is what alcohol abuse is. It's like an easy way of not wanting to be alone in your head.
Well, and so we all know these people, right, that go out all the time.
Yeah.
And personally and privately, we all, for the most part, they are unhappy people.
Mhm.
I feel comfortable saying that.
Yeah. I don't ever
Yeah.
envy them for sure. Right.
Yeah, they're cool, they're happy when they're out, but as soon as they re-enter their lives, because all they did was leave it for a moment.
Yeah.
As soon as they come back to it, they're actually more miserable, even in that moment, and then they go back to their baseline. So that's why, like what you guys said, it's an exploration. Like you actually have to cultivate a personality.
Mhm.
You are not just gonna like stumble out the door and it's gonna land in your lap for 99% of people.
Right.
Right.
You've got to explore, you've got to try stuff. And it is selfish, but it's a selfishness that spreads in a positive way because if you're confident, if you're happy about your situation, even just if you look at your proximate relationship, these
Mhm.
people, these scientists, these therapists are finding, guess what? That actually gets you more sex in a relationship.
Yeah.
Like, and she made the point that like sex and a relationship, they aren't two different things. They they
Uh,
are connected to each other.
absolutely agreed.
Mhm.
Period. So if those things are coming back on you in that way, so you're making yourself better while improving your relationship, what do you think that does outside of your relationship? It's the same thing. It's kind of what we're trying to get at here. If you can become a more fulfilled person, you're going to rub off on the person next to you, which if your relationship is fulfilling, maybe it rubs off on the people nearest to you and to your partner, and it
Mhm.
hopefully can spread that way. But it all starts with you. If you are leaning on someone, and you're trying to go, hey, you need to make me happy. Not only are you going to hurt yourself, but you're going to hurt your relationship, and then it's going to start to spread
For sure. No,
all throughout,
it gets tough. Yeah.
especially now that we have the internet. You can take that momentary feeling and shoot it out into the interwebs, and now you've maybe affected dozens of people.
Yeah.
But this is why communication in a relationship is so important, because you should know your partner well enough to see if they're leaning and try to help them by presenting new hobbies, or maybe they need a new job, maybe they hate their job so much that it's starting to affect
Yeah.
their individuality, and so they're leaning on you. So it's kind of both people's responsibility in a relationship to get a hold of that before it becomes too bad.
Yeah. Look out, pay attention, be mindful, look out for each other.
Hmm.
It can be, I'll kind of give two examples in my marriage. And this is a male perspective. I'm sure there are plenty of men that will have this experience, but probably in a negative way. Maybe you have something, Alex. I'll use your guitar example, right?
Hmm.
I want to buy a guitar. If I'm going to buy one, it's several $100s to over $1,000. For something that I'm going to buy at this point in my life. So it's not a small purchase, and maybe your significant other is irritated that you even want to get it, right? Not the experience that I personally have. Ray and I have a great understanding of this. We've kind of grown and understood this in a relationship. But for men, maybe your girlfriend, fiance, wife shops a lot. They like to buy clothing, they like to buy makeup, and those aren't insignificant purchases either over time, right? Sure. There is no question that Ray has more dollars in makeup in our bathroom than I have dollars in guitars and stuff. There's zero question. Zero question. But I will
definitely true.
Yeah. I will never give her shit for buying those because I know the end result. She's way more it's not that she needs makeup to feel beautiful or anything. She likes makeup. She looks at it almost as a hobby. She's really, really good at doing her makeup. She does makeup for other people. She did it for our sister's graduation. She's done it for other people, whatever. Not all the time, but she's good at it. It's something she enjoys doing, and it's something that makes her feel confident experimenting with. She likes to look good in different clothes. And if she feels good doing that, I know that the $50 here, $70 there, $40 here is absolutely worth the investment for the net positive to the relationship. It's I don't care. It's not like she's spending half of our freaking paycheck on stuff. So there's a responsible purchasing going on, but it can be frequent. It can be a regular thing, and I know that can be irritating to men. That comes up all the time. But yeah, it's a creative and fun outlet, right, Xenomorph? But don't be mad at that. Don't be mad at that. Embrace that and tell them, yes, get it. That's fine.
Yes. Yeah.
Get it.
As long as
Please get it.
If they're working for their money, even if they're not.
Even if
you guys are like, if you're somehow splitting paychecks or whatever the situation is, if they're passionate about something and you guys work it out in a responsible manner, that go. We're going to save up for a couple months and you can spend $500 on that. Like, that's cool. That's going to make you happy. And like Xenomorph said, it's a creative outlet, which everybody needs, whether it's big or small, internal or external. Everybody needs it.
I'm gonna go one step further. It's not even about who's buying it. I was the breadwinner for 98% of Ray and I's relationship because of different reasons, school or whatever. So she went through a much longer school program as a full-time student. So her working part-time or even not working in the last semester because of the workload ramping up in school and with COVID and stuff and baby coming, I was like, look, There's going to be enough things stressing you out that you got to deal with. I can pay the bills right now. We're going to be all right. That doesn't mean I told her she can't buy anything, because it's not that. If you are in a situation where one person has a paycheck, that doesn't mean that other person doesn't get to have their things, as well.
No, and I wasn't trying to make it sound
I know.
like
I just wanted to drill into it because
yeah.
Guys, girls, let them do their thing. Okay, it is a net positive. There's no question, and don't eye roll over it either. Be happy for them that they're going to do that. Run that exercise. You'll feel better about it. They'll feel better, and like John said, you'll get more sex out of it. You just
I'll give a
there.
personal example. So I'm looking at a new synthesizer. It's like a keyboard with like analog knobs and everything, and those aren't cheap. And I've been talking about getting a new one for probably about 1.5 years, 2 years now, because I've always wanted to experiment with one. And for the past year, almost every week, Aubrey's like, "When are you gonna buy that? Like you just got your stimulus check. Just buy it. Or you just worked a bunch of overtime. Just go out and buy it." And I'm going back to that guilt of like, I know I have other things to pay for, so I just do that. But it's gotten to the point where she's like, "Look, if you don't get it now, you're never gonna get it. So you better buy it like this week."
Right. Yeah.
Even
I mean,
if you don't.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but keep going.
No, go ahead.
Say this is. I mean, we're all saying this, but this is what the research also shows. Like, you don't have to believe us. This is what the research on these topics informs us of.
Yeah.
Do these purchases, get yourself figured out, and it's a cyclical feedback loop that will inevitably come back positively on you.
Yes.
Does it
and your family?
It does it in the proximate, because if you're doing something you like, you're going to be happier in the moment. But guess what? It also makes you happier for the long term.
Right.
So there's no downside here. And if you find yourself with a partner that increases their jealousy as you're doing this, I mean, that's positive. That's information as well that you need. Some people aren't going to have relationships with a lot of freedom. That's something a lot of people are experiencing. But that's that lean that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And it needs to be recognized. It needs to be talked about, because there's a healthy way to do a relationship and there's an unhealthy way to do it. And if you're trying to explore yourself, as long as it's not, I'm going to go out and start assaulting people.
Or get on heroin or something.
Yeah, you should probably start trying to do those things. And if you're being held back, maybe that's not the right person. At least maybe not the right person at the right time.
Right. Or have the conversation,
Yes.
Yeah. Communication.
And you go from there.
Get on the same page and see if you can get there. But yeah, ultimately that'll let you know. You'll get to that answer if it's the right person or not. But
so I kind of wanted to circle back around to maybe things you guys like, the exercises we did this week about writing and reading. Did you guys read anything this week?
I had very little time with it, unfortunately, but I'm making my way through.
Jordan read every day, but he only made it through the first page.
Oh man, that's rough.
Oh, that issue? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, that issue.
Oh, is that number one?
Yeah,
issue number one?
For sure. I've never purchased a magazine, and I'm not an impulse shopper, really, especially like at a grocery store, and they always put all your impulse purchases at the exit line. This one got me. I couldn't walk by it.
Did you grab the National Enquirer too?
No, I did not.
Sasquatch sighting.
Rolling Stone, Eddie Van Halen special edition, plus the 100 greatest guitarists of all time current list, which I always contend with. I think these lists are I mean, I got it because I want to learn about these guitarists anyway, and hear a little bit of the story, whether I agree with the countdown or not. Actually, I very much disagree with the countdown, but there's still
Well, it's subjective.
awesome things.
Who,
Right.
who did they put as their top 5?
So nobody ever takes Hendrix's spot as number 1, and it's pretty much always Eric Clapton at number 2. So you got Hendrix gets his number 1 spot, two full page. Yeah, I mean Hendrix always has that. Actually, Hendrix has 4 pages in here.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and Eric Clapton.
So.
Eric Clapton's always in number 2, which he actually did. There was a really cool interview. I think it was a Rolling Stone interview after he got, because he's been at number 2 in most of the lists. So he's pretty much considered the greatest living guitarist, because obviously Hendrix is dead. So somebody asked him what it feels like, and this was before Prince died, but somebody asked him what it feels like to be the greatest living guitarist, and he was like, I don't know, ask Prince. I was like, yeah, that's a cool answer.
It's humble.
Yeah.
Well, that's usually what you find by people that are actually confident.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, Prince is like a crazy prodigy with music, man. I think he taught himself some high single or low double-digit number of instruments by the time he was a teenager. Like at a good. Oh yeah, the dude was crazy talented. Yeah, right. Right. So yeah, so it's interesting. I mean,
some of that.
Yeah, pretty much just some of the Eddie stories in here.
Yeah,
which are pretty cool. His son, any Van Halen fans out there, his son Wolfgang just put out his first song. I think it was his first song that he released. No, he put a song out when his dad, when Eddie was still alive, that they listened to, but a song he released after he passed, Xenomorph's crying face, about his dad, and the video, man, will just break you. It's a tearjerker for sure, and the song ends, or the video ends, I don't know if it's in just the audio version, but the music video, if you watch it, it's home footage of Eddie basically being a dad to Wolfgang at different stages when he was a baby, to when they played shows together on stage, because Wolfgang plays bass. So like they're playing shows together, and then it ends with a voicemail that Eddie left Wolfgang, and it's just, oh dude, it's the biggest tearjerker. He's basically just telling him in a voicemail how much he loves him, and he's so proud of him, and he misses him, this, that, and the other. They were probably just, hadn't talked maybe in a few days or whatever, and he just in a voicemail was just expressing how much he loved him as his son, and that's how he ended the freaking music video of the song about his dad. I'm like, Jesus, man.
Wow.
I don't want to be in the room when Jacqueline watches that.
Oh, I sent it to her right after I watched it, so I'm sure she saw it. Yeah, it's good. But anyway, back to reading. You guys can go. You probably had more reading than I did. Like I said, man, I was in the weeds this week, but
hey, it's all good. It happens, man. What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, I read a couple articles and whatnot, but I actually went back and started rereading my master's thesis and rewriting it.
Really?
Even though it's not going to get submitted to anyone. Yeah, I started editing it.
Yeah.
I've done it in the past, but years ago. And so I was rereading that, which it was on memetics, which is, before the term meme became an internet thing. It actually had a scientific approach coined by Richard Dawkins. And it was just the idea that packets of information, and information is a broad term, can produce phenotypic behavioral outputs in the real world, so that information can affect behavior, essentially. So what's that paper, when I originally wrote it, was like 56 pages or something, or actually no, sorry, it's reversed. I was able to write what I thought was the paper in 12 pages. I submitted it to my advisor, and they said it was not long enough. Not, not that
Right.
the argument
So
wasn't made, it just purely wasn't long enough. So I added like 40 pages of material or whatever.
we were just
And
talking about this last week. Some people can get the point across in 5 pages. Other people take 30. Like it doesn't matter.
well, one of the biggest disagreements I had with academia is the same thing I have with engineering in the real world is, and engineering's a little better about it, but academia has really gotten into a feedback loop where it's for itself.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the academics you grow up watching are like Bill Nye,
Yeah.
and which is purely for other people.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Right.
not trying to, there's no clout, and you're not worried about publication numbers. You're just trying to spread scientific knowledge and make it seem as interesting as it actually is. But if you read a scientific paper, man, they suck all the interest right out of that for you.
I'm sure.
That,
I'm sure.
so I always tried to write flowery and with the intent that it was for the public. And a person in the public's not going to read a 40-page thesis,
No.
period. You can maybe get through 12. So anyway, I read that. Also did a lot of the writing exercise on that as well. So that's what I spent most of my time doing. I realized I realized in the past, but I realized again that I was not a good writer back then. Period.
Interesting.
That is interesting. I've actually done the same thing with some papers I've written, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago. And at the time, I thought they were great, and I submitted them, and they got good grades. But I look back on them. I think I did it like last year. I'm like, wow,
You
this is crap.
dummy.
This is garbage.
Yeah, I was making really just objectively bad writing mistakes,
Yeah,
and they were pretty frequent. Like I could go in there and correct them, and it was a better paper in an hour, easy,
right.
just by simply simplifying the language. So, but I found some interesting things in there. It, I went into animal studies to prove because before you get into humans, you want to make sure that the non-human literature shines on your idea in a meaningful way.
Hmm.
So my argument that information can produce effects in behavior, I used a couple. There was a study done on blackbirds in Europe, I believe. So the blackbird study, and there was actually was it a, it might have been rats. Yeah, there was a rat study. The rat study is probably more informative. They, uh, the rat and guppy, I'm sorry, rat and guppy studies. They took these animals in captivity, bred them in captivity, and then they set up various conditions. So with a fear-based stimulus, like a noise that produces alters the biochemistry of the organism to tend them toward fear.
Hmm.
And they associated that noise with biologically what should be something that they're scared of, like a pike in the case for a guppy, or a minnow, or a small fish. Jesus, it's been a while.
Yeah.
So a pike is a predator, but then they associated that same stimulus with a non-predator, like a goldfish, right?
Hmm.
And in these animal studies, you find that if the animal has an evolutionary module that makes sense, like the pike does, or like a snake does for a rat, for example, that fear response was elongated and made worse by the extra stimulus. But you had the short-term fear for the non-predator, but that fear abated. So you can't just take information and create whatever behavior that you want, which
Hmm.
is, and I should have framed this prior, but my paper was basically looking at how memetics in the field, there's this one version of memetics in which information is actually its own replicator, like it serves itself and it's separate from our biology.
Hmm.
I was pushing back against that and saying that our biology is mediating and or allowing this to thrive. you can't disconnect it from the organism. So I thought that was a good argument, showing that these people were associating a stimulus, an outside piece of information, and trying to tack it on top of these conditions, right? These fear responses and these predators and or non-predators. And the fact that it was worse with a predator versus a non-predator tells me that if you have that internal module, you can maybe amplify it, which is what I think we see in humans, right? So, and a human-based version of this is, I don't think this research has been done, at least it wasn't done at the time, but you always put forth ideas for research, where they should take the topic. And I always thought it would be a good idea to measure the PTSD rates of sexual assault victims in the military relative to the standard population, to the civilian population. And I put that forth because of the meme of brotherhood and family in the military. So I thought you'd gather the data from incest-based sexual assault, civilian non-incest sexual assault, and then the military. And I always put it out that I thought that the military and the incestual PTSD rates would be more similar than the general population because of the meme of brotherhood. So that would be, to relate it back to the animal research, because humans are inherently, we tend toward that kinship relationship in terms of protection. We're more willing to help people that we have a genetic interest in than a random stranger, stuff like that. So if the meme of brotherhood is it's purposeful in the military and it has outputs, right? If you're going to all of a sudden start protecting someone that's not a family member, like a family member. So I thought, what if that person violated that agreement and became a person that sexually assaulted you? Would you then view that person as a family member that sexually assaulted you? And that's where that research idea came. But it's all
interesting.
That idea comes from the animal research of just having that pre-evolved module in your brain that information can latch onto and then amplify.
Wow, interesting. That's really intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be a hard study.
That's an intense paper.
Yeah. It's dark.
Well, yeah, and most of it's spent doing animal research like that, but it's just it's a worthwhile thing to investigate, especially with, I mean, it's pretty well known at this point that sexual assault in the military is a very common thing.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
Well, I read something a little less real, I guess. I was reading this. I don't know if it's going to show up on the screen.
Triumph of the Moon.
Yeah. Can you see it? Okay. So it's a history of like paganism and witchcraft.
Nice.
And then it's like how covens came to be and like finding different gods and goddesses and like where all of the like using herbs and doing rituals and shit like that, like where all that came from. It's a pretty good book. I really don't know why I started to get into it. But it was like a month ago. I bought all these like witchcraft and pagan books because I don't know anything. I didn't know anything about it. So I'm like, that's something I want to learn, you know?
Yeah.
But it's good.
I feel like it piggybacks off of the stuff we've talked about, right? When you start exploring things like mushrooms, you're inevitably going to be interested in things of the earth, right? So like you start thinking of druidism.
Yeah, which this book goes over pretty extensively.
I was just going to ask you that question. Do they go over that? Because that's an aspect. If you dive into paganism, that is something that's not really something that comes up very often.
Yeah, it's kind of like a side shot of paganism. Like it's kind of hit or miss in the, well, at least in the books that I have. But yeah, that I was reading through that, and then as far as writing goes, throughout the day, I had a little notepad with me, and then throughout the day, all of the things that like would come to my head that I was super anxious about, or like those nagging, like once I get off work, I gotta finish that paper, or I have to finish that homework. And I would write it down every time it would pop into my head. And at the end of the day, I looked and it was just like the same 4 thoughts, but like
Yeah.
50 times, you know? And that's, I mean, that's just how it goes with anxiety sometimes. You just get those mind loops.
Yeah,
Well, and that's why I like the idea of writing.
Mhm.
Is it's one thing to feel something in the moment, but it's another thing to look back on it and see a pattern. And if you can start to see a
Yeah.
pattern, you can start outside of the moment developing a
Mhm.
strategy to attack things in the moment.
Right.
right.
Like, once I start thinking about this one thing, I know that's gonna lead inevitably to that thing that I don't wanna think about. So, as soon as I notice I'm starting to think about that one thing, think about something else, or take myself out of it and stretch, or go for a walk, or do something completely different.
Yeah,
Shock the
this
system with a Wim Hof
all right.
session, you know.
Mhm.
This writing exercise kind of inspired me to. I used to write a lot, just almost journaling kind of a thing,
Yeah.
and I switched that as a whole. I don't really do any sort of journaling in recent years, and most of my planning, writing, anything like that is done electronically now. And last week, John, when you proposed this as the weekly challenge or weekly goal or exercise to do, you framed it in a way of, writing things down is healthy and taking the time to
Mhm.
do it. And I was making the case for, in the past 2 weeks, slowing things down and things that require you to focus, whether it was our first conversation where smoking pipe from a or smoking tobacco from a pipe, or playing music on a record player, different things like that that actually require more ritual and more intention behind them. And I didn't apply that to writing. I switched everything for a convenience sake to cloud-based text documents, that I can just pull up wherever I'm at, and it's, there's an element of convenience there. And I think I want to actively combat that. So I bought a um, planner that has weekly, daily, monthly um, sections, as well as note sections. And I'm gonna, I think, ongoing, make that more of a practice.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
awesome.
it's just like everything else we talk about. What the trend, the overwhelming trend for all these things that we seem to discuss is that you need to take the time, it needs to be intentional, and there's a place to do something, and it's that place to do that thing.
Mhm.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
different. You shouldn't be writing, in my opinion, in a room with your family or whatever. If when you can have interruptions, take the time, get a piece of paper out, close the door, put some music on maybe. I don't like to necessarily write, if I'm going something intentionally with music on, but if I'm just exploring stuff, I can put music on.
Yeah.
But just make it its own space for sure.
Right. And back in the day when families would all go into the den and listen to a radio program. For sure. I think about that regularly. I want that to be something that I do with my family when Iris is a little older and we plan on having a second one. Before TV was a thing, all of the musicians that I listen to, all the great guitarists that I listen to, they always talk about how they became inspired. Almost across the board, it's because their parents were always playing music in the house. There was always a record on. That was a ritual. They would go together, they'd get a new
Mhm.
record, they'd go home, put it on, and listen to it. Like, that was the
They would just sit
activity.
and listen,
Yeah,
right?
not, you know, just hours of TV or this, that, and the other. And I really like the idea of doing that. So that's something that I plan on implementing. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I know,
Well,
I think that's absolutely important, and that's why I have this pretty much this whole room dedicated to that one act. I can just come in here, sit in my chair in front of my speakers, put on a record, and that's all I'm doing
I know, dude.
for
I
the next
totally am
hour.
stealing it from you. You're my initial inspiration for a room like that for sure. So when I
Word.
came to
well,
visit, so.
that's what was going to be one of the things I said was going to say to do for the next coming week is do kind of a sensory deprivation album listen.
Mhm.
Our family used to get together a couple of us, go to a specific house on a specific day. We would all send through via Dropbox 5 songs or something like that. And then we would compile them and they'd become a playlist. We'd go there, turn all the lights off, and just listen to music.
Great
No,
Yeah, and
experience.
I
no
think we can
conversation.
add that.
Just listen to music.
I think we can add that to our weekly thing just to wrap it up because we are
Yeah.
at time. But on top of the reading and writing and the stretching, pick one album that you've never listened to any of the songs from. It can be any genre, and that's all you do for that whole album is listen to it. Just either lay down or sit down and listen to it. What do you guys think?
Yeah, for sure.
I'm down with
I
that.
would take it further is I would do it in the dark.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best way to do it, just so you don't have any visual distractions. But
Anybody?
Eliminate all distractions and just make it about being in the dark, maybe even with your eyes closed. If you can make it pitch black to where you can be dark with your eyes open, it's just different.
Yeah.
If you haven't done that before, it's something you should try.
Yeah. And our social media posts, a lot of them this month are celebrating Black blues musicians for Black History Month, and I fully encourage anyone and everyone to explore that genre. It is it's got its diehard fans, but it's certainly a smaller fan base than a lot of genres. And
sure.
if you want an easy starting point, the album you got behind you, Alex, to the side of you, Chuck Berry. If you like rock and roll music, it basically exists because of him. So
the first, I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think the first time rock and roll appeared on an album was on this album.
Yeah. I mean, Chuck Berry. I mean, you go a little bit before Chuck Berry. You got T-Bone Walker, who Chuck Berry pretty much stole music content and the whole persona. T-Bone Walker was like the original showman for flashy guitar. He had the nice suits, and he did like the splits on stage playing his guitar. He had like the true showman, original licks and how he played.
And that name.
Yeah, T-Bone Walker, man. T-Bone Walker. Chuck Berry, if you don't listen to him, you've heard his music. If you watch movies,
absolutely,
you've heard his music. So
it's everywhere. It's the same thing with Bob Dylan. If you've ever listened to any music ever, you've heard a Dylan song or a Chuck Berry song.
Right. Just explore that genre. You will. Blues is for everybody. It's not about sad, like depressing music. I know it's the blues, but it's about hard times and beating them. Right? It's about
Lightning Sam Hopkins. Listen to Sam Hopkins.
Lightning Hopkins is that's that dude. You had a tough day at work, go put on some Lightning Hopkins and just chill, just listen, make you feel all right.
I mean, the blues isn't a down in the dumps thing. It's about overcoming being down in the dumps.
Right.
Yeah, like it's talking through it with a melody.
Yeah.
Like it or not, I mean, it's inextricably tied to slavery.
Yes.
100%.
Period.
Go watch the Netflix documentary "Devil at the Crossroads" on Robert Johnson, who was our first post for a musician this month. Robert Johnson is the godfather of modern blues music, period. And that story is incredibly interesting. It's sad. The man had a very sad life, a hard life. But what he created from it is something really special.
Yep.
Yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's honesty, it's bearing witness, and which it's things that we're like relearning as the privileged society that we are, that we should be doing anyway. Yep. You need to be able to speak about what's going on in your life, to find ways to cope with it, and in a very blues sense, but in a super mild version of it. What did I do when I finished my awful week this week? And my wife can tell you it's what I did. I came home and I threw on some music and I sang full voice in the shower. I sang that stuff, cleaned the week off my body, and sang it out as loud as I possibly could as well.
Which is great therapy. If you've never
It
completely
is.
belted out a song that you know most of the words to, do it. It feels great.
Blues is active therapy. That is what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, go dig some of it, man. Get some blues in. Hit up Room 145 on social media if you need any artist recommendations. There's a handful of them in there right now, and a new one will be coming every day this month. So enjoy.
So this week, we'll keep reading, keep writing, keep with your 15 minutes of stretching, just mobility, and add on, hit an album in the dark.
Yep.
Right.
For sure.
And since it's Valentine's Day, we talked a lot about that stuff. Try to heed some of the lessons, for the coming week. And in the proximate, it's Valentine's Day. You don't have to have a necessarily significant other, which is why I brought up that initial conversation, and then the two fighters. Like, love can be expressed to family members, to parents, to friends.
To yourself.
Yeah, you all know people, and you definitely know yourself. Take a moment to celebrate that in some way today. But and then throughout the week, try to put one of those things into practice. Try to take a moment to explore an interest that you have and see how that comes back on yourself and your relationship.
Dive into it.
Yeah, not only for yourself, but make sure to make a point to tell your partner to do that.
Yeah.
Make
that's
sure
important.
that you're giving them that space to grow into as well. So that's your everyone's homework for the week.
Yep. Done, man.
Sounds good.
I love you guys, brothers.
All right, love you too.
We'll talk soon. Take it easy, everybody. Have a good week.
All right, see you next week. Later.